We have to go immediately before the Supreme Court. This thing would have all been over with 2 years ago. But they waited and waited and waited, and then they saw I was running, and they waited, and then they saw I was hot, and they filed lawsuits. These are very dishonest people. That's called election interference. And now they're fighting like hell because they want to try and get a guilty plea from the Supreme Court of the United States, which I can't imagine because you have presidential immunity.
That's former President Trump on special counsel Jack Smith's petition with the Supreme Court to decide if the 45th president has any immunity from charges related to the 2020 election. Smith says he made the unusual move to prevent Trump from delaying the start of the trial on March 4th. The court has asked Trump's lawyers to respond to the special counsel's motion by this upcoming Wednesday. Joining me right now with analysis are former Department of Defense Chief of Staff and Attorney Kash Patel and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, who is the author of the new book, War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism. It's available right now. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. And Alan, I want to kick this off with you. What do you make of Jack Smith taking in the Supreme Court and waiting on this? What does this do to all of this for Trump? What's your analysis?
Well, it's hypocrisy on steroids. The trial judge said she's going to treat Donald Trump case as if he was an ordinary citizen not running for president. And then Smith comes in and says, but he's running for president. And so we have to deny him the right to have an appellate court analyze the problem and skip right to the Supreme Court so that we can get a conviction before he runs for president. It's a complete politicization of the criminal justice system in a partisan way. And it denies Trump a basic right to have a two-step appellate process. First, an appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and second, certiorari to the United States Supreme Court. Nobody's above the law, but nobody's below the law. And they're putting Donald Trump in a situation where he's being denied the rights that any ordinary citizen would have, while at the same time saying he has to be treated like an ordinary citizen when it comes to gag rules and other kinds of things.
Well, I mean, you know, Kash Patel, I feel like Donald Trump is the face of this mistreatment that many Americans are feeling today, from surveillance, from propaganda, censorship. We just came off of this period where we know from the Twitter files, government censored information. Tell us about that and what this FISA renewal this last week means for all of that, because FISA and a component of it, Congress passed a renewal, temporary renewal, until April of next year.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Maria. Look, the biggest concern I have going forward is the politicization and weaponization and creation of a two-tier system of justice as a result. Back when Devin Nunes and I ran the Russiagate investigation and exposed the FISA corruption, we recommended a slew of fixes so it never happened again. Unfortunately, Congress chose to allow 702 FISA to basically be reauthorized. What does that mean? What is 702? It's fancy for foreign intelligence surveillance. It means me as a former national security prosecutor and intelligence operative would go overseas and manhunt terrorists. That's what it's for. But the FISA court in April of 2022 publicized an opinion that said the FBI used it illegally 275,000 times domestically against Americans, 16 different occasions against those affiliated with January 6th. 19,000 times domestically against donors to a congressional campaign, and wait for it, 24,000 separate times against Americans and groups in and around January 6th. That FISA process has been turned on its head, redirected inwards, and anyone who says, oh, that's just a Republican conspiracy speak, that's the FISA court that rescinded Rod Rosenstein's illegal surveillance of Donald Trump twice based on our investigation, and now they do it again, and they prove the FBI and DOJ have weaponized justice, and the Republican leadership in Congress allowed it to be reauthorized, essentially through the next election cycle.
So what will this mean in terms of the FBI, Christopher Wray, going into the next election?
Well, that's just it. Christopher Wray goes to Congress and says, I fixed it all. We have more training. Well, unfortunately, when you have the police officers, the cops in this country who break the law, we can't rely on themselves to police themselves. That is a communist form of a police representation. What we have to have had done is Congress to put forth a bill that put in cops from Congress in the FISA process at the FISA court, limiting their abuse of this power. I mean, just think of it. If Chris Wray and Merrick Garland and company utilized the FISA process to manhunt terrorists that were illegally coming into our country through our southern border, we wouldn't lose 24 of them based on their own testimony. And so what Chris Wray has now done is weaken American national security and redirected one of the most sensitive intelligence apparatuses against elections and those protesting their free speech right within America. And every time the FISA court asked the FBI, why did you allow your agents to do this? Their answer was, I could not recall. And they gave them a get-out-of-jail-free card, and the Republican majority, I know this is harsh, rewarded them for breaking the law and allowing this election interference to continue through 2024, mainly against Donald Trump.
Wow, there's a lot of election interference indirectly, Alan. When does election interference mean election fraud?
Well, it's very hard to prove fraud by government agencies, but I think in the court of public opinion, what we're seeing is an attempt to get down and dirty convictions of Donald Trump. Of course they're going to get convictions if they bring a trial in New York City or in the District of Columbia or in Fulton County, knowing that it's very likely that a number of these convictions will be reversed on appeal after the election. And that really does constitute a kind of election fraud, misusing the criminal justice system to influence an election. You know, the Department of Justice has regulations saying never, never, ever time prosecutions so as to have an impact on the elections. And these manipulations clearly are designed to have an impact on the elections. And they will cause many Americans, if the results are against Trump, they will cause many Americans to say it was dirty pool. And what we need more than anything else is the cleanest possible election in 2024 without any political thumbs on the scale of the justice system, which will entitle people to question the election. We need an election, whichever way it comes out, in which every American says, this is fair, let's move on.
Do people understand this is abuse by the FBI, Kash?
I think everybody's starting to see it. Even the people on the radical left are saying we've got to basically run a Russiagate 2.0 operation and bury this with fake news headlines and run the cover-up, which is part of the two-tier system of justice that the FBI has relied upon for years to rig presidential elections by going to secret courts and illegally surveilling American people.
Yeah.
But more importantly, they had an opportunity to fix it, and they failed. And now this is going to continue. And I just want to say one thing about the reauthorization. It may be till April, but get this. The court works with the FBI to permit the surveillance to continue through the end of 2024 since Congress allowed a short-term reauthorization. Now the cops are governing themselves yet again.
Unbelievable. Alan, real quick on your book on this war on Jews, has anything changed since the uproar around the university presidents and their failure to answer the simple question on whether genocide of Jews violates their policy?
It's gotten much worse because Harvard and MIT have reaffirmed the president's actions, failing to understand that it's not just the president's testimony in front of Congress, it's the entire diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucracy that is causing anti-Semitism and causing universities to be divided along racial, religious, and ethnic lines. It's not enough to get rid of these presidents. We have to get rid of the DEI bureaucracy that is destroying American education. In my book, I have a detailed analysis of the whole DEI phenomenon and how it has destroyed America.
I don't know what's worse, the corruption in plain sight or the ineptitude of policy. We're going to keep a spotlight on it. Thank you, gentlemen. Kash Patel and Alan Dershowitz. We'll be right back.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.